guys, Tivo2 here, back for my review of Doctor Who, The Power of the Doctor. This is the 13th Doctor's final episode, so let's get right into it. So I'm going to go over this episode a little differently than my previous reviews. I'm not going to go over every plot point in order as it happened, just because it was complete chaos. This episode had so many plot points, and literally I tried doing that, and it was a very, very, very long review. So I'm going to try to condense things down a little more. So ultimately this episode is about the Master, who is plotting with the Daleks and the Cybermen, this big plot to basically erase the Doctor from existence, as he says. And basically this plan is to regenerate the Doctor into the Master, which is very weird and is kind of more like he transfers his consciousness into her body. But I guess maybe he, in order to do that, needs to do it in the middle of a regeneration or something. It's kind of unclear what's kind of going on. He just says that he's going to make the Doctor regenerate into him, which is strange. But yeah, the events leading up to this are very convoluted. Basically, we have a Cyberman conversion planet, which they need to get this sentient energy source in order to power it, and then they're going to take it to Earth, and then the Master has agreed to use it in order to power this device that's going to cause the Doctor to regenerate into him. And he also needs the Daleks' help in order to get the Doctor there. So, yeah. And basically how that's done is they have a, well, okay, this is weird because they don't have it, but there is a rogue Dalek that apparently doesn't believe in the Dalek cause. It sees how they've strayed from their original path of just having the Khalids survive, and it thinks it's wrong. And apparently the Daleks used it to find the Doctor, even though I feel like unless a rogue Dalek, like that's just a common thing, they would have no way of knowing that it would... I don't know. It seems like that whole thing was really reliant on just random chance, honestly, that there would be a rogue Dalek to contact the Doctor at that moment, and they would then be able to track it like that. Just, it feels way too convenient and is a little weird. And then that rogue Dalek plot point was only there for a couple minutes and then just, like, was gone. And that's another thing I do not like about this episode, is that there's just, and like I said, there's so many plot points, and so many of them either are only there for a couple minutes, only exist to further progress the plot, or if they're there for longer, it's just they're too confusing, honestly, and the whole thing altogether, it's a very confusing episode to kind of wrap your head around. There's so much going on. The Master also kidnaps seismologists, not because he needs them in them themselves, but he wants to use the drills they were operating near volcanoes, rather, he's going to let the Daleks do that, rather, as part of their deal, and they are going to basically shift the tectonic plates of the Earth in order to erupt volcanoes and annihilate humanity. And he's also agreed to let the Cybermen use their conversion planet thing on the Earth, and yeah, really both of those can't happen at once, so chances are he's just gonna have them like fight each other or something at the end of it. And yeah, I think his whole idea is he's gonna get rid of all his enemies at once, basically. The Doctor, the Daleks, and the Cybermen. So yeah, this is probably one of the Master's most craziest, most convoluted schemes yet. Kind of the elephant in the room would be the actual swapping places of the Master and the Doctor itself. And this is very kind of interesting. So obviously the Doctor, like I said, is forced to regenerate. She becomes the Master, and so now we see the Master in the Doctor's clothes, and his normal body is for some reason still there, and is just like unconscious. So again, that's why it kind of leads me to believe it's like a transferring of consciousness, and this is also backed up by the fact that the Doctor's consciousness still exists. It's just like elsewhere in its own kind of plane. And within her consciousness, she does see visions of like the past Doctors kind of representing her consciousness. And I thought that was nice, but it just, again, it's a lot to take in, honestly. But it is cool, honestly. I do like that, to see her interact with classic Doctors, like Colin Baker's there, Peter Davison, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, most of them except for like Tom Baker, and they also have David Bradley's first Doctor. And honestly, it was cool seeing them all interact. Obviously, it is a bit weird that all the Doctors look considerably older than they ever would have on screen. There's really no explanation for that in universe, so I'm not sure why that is. But yeah, that's a more minor nitpick, I guess. So now that the Master has basically become the Doctor, he basically now is going to like travel the universe in the TARDIS, and he takes Yaz with him. And Yaz, by the way, can fly the TARDIS now, which is a bit weird, but like, I guess to be fair, she has been with the Doctor for quite a while now and has maybe like learned a bit in that time, but it's still just a little bit weird and convenient to me. So she does manage eventually to overtake it from the Master and kick him out, but not before he tries to like send videos, I guess, to the internet, saying, "Hey, the Doctor's doing all this stuff to the Earth," because he started like doing those plans with the Daleks and the Cybermen, and he's like, "The Doctor caused this, and he's gonna like stain her good name or whatever." Um, Again, it's just crazy to me. And he also, as part of the act, he puts on this big amalgamation of a bunch of classic Doctor's outfits, which is crazy. He's got like the seventh Doctor's sweater, the fourth Doctor's scarf, the second Doctor's recorder. It's a bit, again, just crazy and just reference heavy. In terms of like the overall plot progression, we've also got obviously Ace and Tegan are back, and there's some neat moments of Tegan being a bit mad at the Doctor for leaving her behind for like 38 years. And there's like a bit of resentment toward Yaz, which kind of echoes back to, say, School Reunion, for example, with Sarah Jane and Rose, which is interesting, but again, just proves my point of a bunch of just callbacks and references. Um, and also, we have Ashid coming back because I guess the Master cloned him and then gave the tissue compressed version of him as a doll to Tegan, saying it was the Doctor who gave it, and now he and the other Cybermen can now infiltrate UNIT because of that. And UNIT becomes under attack, and Kate is there as well. And then they have to like fight off the Cybermen and escape and whatnot. And there's a close call in there where Kate almost gets converted, which is honestly pretty crazy. I genuinely thought it would happen for a bit, just because she is a Chibnall created character after all. I mean, not really. I think she appeared in like somebody's fan film in the 90s, but in terms of like the actual canon, she was introduced by Chibnall, so I honestly thought there was a chance she might get killed off there, and it would honestly be kind of sad because like cyber conversion happened to the Brigadier as well after his death, obviously, but still, point still stands. That would have been kind of a sad way for her to go, honestly. But she does get saved ultimately. Yeah, so in terms of other plot points, we have this thing where the Doctor supposedly implanted like these hologram projectors into all the companions, and so all throughout they've got like holograms of the different Doctors talking to them, which to me just feels like a cheap way to get the Doctor in multiple places at once, which has happened a lot in the Chibnall era, strangely, and also is just a means of getting the classic companions, Tegan and Ace, to just be able to talk to their respective Doctors, which, again, nice moments, but it just felt a bit out there a little bit. We got Ace and Tegan going off to fight the Daleks and the Cybermen, and Graham is actually there too at the volcano location because I guess he is also looking into all this activity that's been going on, and so it's kind of nice to kind of get him back and get as many as possible. Not Ryan, because I think the actor was doing some other commitments, but as many as possible of the 13th Doctor's companions and a bunch of classic ones in as possible. I don't know. It's nice, but again, it's kind of a lot, but it is cool just for at least to have them back for Jodie Whittaker's swan song. So back on the Cyberman planet thing, the Master starts kind of executing his plan to start like destroying the Earth in the various different ways. And strange thing happens. The Ruth Doctor enters the room out of utterly nowhere. But it turns out when the Cybermen shoot her, it's just a hologram, and they end up just like shooting themselves on accident instead, straight through her, because she was the hologram projected by the projector. And yeah, then there's this plan came up with by the hologram to basically use the Cybermen's regeneration, because now they are going to regenerate because these are the Cyber Masters, obviously, and it's going to use their regeneration to basically degenerate or regenerate, however you want to look at it, the Master back into the Doctor. So yeah, Tegan does manage to uh, just like overload the power of the Cybermen into them so that they all kind of get like knocked out, and Kate's conversion gets stopped, so she is saved, which I guess is nice. Graham and Ace are attacking Daleks with Nitro 9, which again is another cool reference. Again, just stuff just going all over the place. They start like messing with the drills to destroy them, but really just like one or two. And then the Doctor ends up picking them up. And then meanwhile, Kate ends up blowing up the entire unit building in order to try to seal the Cybermen inside. And they all get saved by the Doctor. And then they all go to the Cyberman planet in order to like free the energy being. And there's this nice, I don't know, it probably isn't meant to be a callback, but it reminds me of like the Journey's End, in which there's all the companions kind of like gathered around the TARDIS console, and it's just kind of a nice moment again. She's going to use the two TARDISes, both hers and the Master's, to move the planet through time and then like fire it at the Earth in order to like stop the volcanoes. So again, kind of crazy scheme, but I mean, I guess it ties everything together nicely, I guess. And then she frees the energy creature, which the Cybermen were using. The Master comes out, and now the Master is dying. And in his dying moments, he does redirect that energy towards the Doctor and end up shooting her with it. And the Doctor basically gets knocked unconscious. She's not dead yet, but it is very emotional as Yaz now has to carry the Doctor to the TARDIS and is like, no, 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 this can't be happening. You're not dead. Which she isn't yet. So by the time the Doctor does awaken in the TARDIS, Yaz has taken everybody home. But now the cloister bell sounds because the Doctor is beginning to regenerate. Her hand begins to glow, and so she offers Yaz to take her on one last final trip. And I guess it's kind of like their date, I guess, if you want to go into the whole Thasmin thing. That wasn't really mentioned in the episode, in which they both go and get ice cream, and then they're just sitting on top of the TARDIS overlooking Earth from space, which is a very nice shot. I have to say, it's like a very nice moment and just looks really nice. And yeah, it's actually got this really nice moment because it's got the Doctor. She's coming to terms with the fact that she is about to regenerate. In fact, her hand's been glowing the entire time, which is a little weird, but yeah. And it's just nice acting on Jodie's part because she's got this like suppressed just like terror in her voice, like she's like holding back tears, and it's like it's genuinely really sad and really like heartfelt. And like I'm not even the biggest fan of Jodie and Chibnall's era on the show, and yet this scene was just so kind of emotional to me, and from this point on the episode seriously had me like genuinely sad. Because then the Doctor admits that she must regenerate alone, and so Yaz is sent home, basically. And she does meet up, though, with Graham and with Dan. So they've been invited to this, like, Doctor talking therapy session to talk about the Doctor with other classic companions, including ones not previously in the episode. We have Joe Grant, we have Kate Stewart, we have Mel Bush, we have Ian Chesterton, and that's kind of cool because we got like, Bonnie Langford, and that's like the first time I've seen them on Doctor Who, honestly, since then when they were actually on the show. That's kind of crazy that they're finally back. Obviously, I think Joe returned in the Sarah Jane Adventures, but I don't think these two really have returned at all, at least on screen. So, like, that was kind of nice to see, and this was honestly an interesting scene. So now we get to the moment the episode's all been leading up to, the Doctor's regeneration. And I have to admit, obviously, by this point, I was genuinely sad. I was like, this is it. This is like kind of sad, honestly. And the doctor says she wants to see a sunrise before she dies. And so she goes to this cliff and overlooks this sunrise. It's a very, very beautiful shot. And it is there on which she regenerates. Her final words, Doctor, whoever you are, tag, you're it. Then she goes and regenerates. And it plays 13th theme from Segun Akinola. And there's the regeneration. It's very kind of electric, kind of like Capaldi's was, with all the like sparks and kind of electricity noises, which is kind of interesting. But it was such a beautiful shot with like the sunset kind of complementing the orange color, and it looked really nice. And then the big showstopper that really threw everyone for utter craziness is that who is it? It is not Shudigawa. No, it is David Tennant. So yeah, those theories that Jodie would regenerate into Tennant for some reason are true. She becomes David Tennant, and he immediately recognizes himself through his teeth, which is a nice callback to his first appearance in which he notes that he has new teeth. So yeah, I guess that does make sense that that is probably the first thing that would alert the doctor that, hey, something's up, something feels familiar now. And yeah, looks at her hands, feels his face now, I guess, again. And yeah, it's the 10th Doctor. And of course, he says the classic line, What? 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 And that's what the episode ends on. There is this weird element where the Doctor's clothes also change, which to me seems like some kind of indication that this isn't a normal regeneration in a lot of ways. Something is up here. And I feel that way, definitely. And I feel like that's going to tie into the 60th special next year quite a bit, because I've seen theories going around that perhaps this is the Toymaker's doing, which if you've seen the theories that the Toymaker's coming back in the 60th, I feel like maybe this is indeed his doing. But yeah, we'll just have to wait till then to see. So yeah, that's the whole plot of the episode. Now I'm going to give my overall thoughts. I feel like this was really quite an interesting episode. Like, I feel like there was a lot going on and it was kind of an interesting kind of plot overall. But I feel like it was almost like too convoluted to like, it just felt like it was just so much going on, I guess I should say. And it was very confusing how it all fit together. It did fit together, but it's a lot going on, and it felt like it kind of detracted from the story because you're trying too hard to make sense of it. And it feels obvious that Chibnall really tried to make this episode big in scale. He wanted it to be a big deal. This is his swan song and Jodie's, and he wanted it to be big. So obviously, as I said, this is a 2-hour long episode, and it's got so many plot lines, so many references. And I feel like those are simultaneously its biggest things going for it and its biggest faults, because it makes so much stuff going on, so many characters. It's so hard to follow. So if you like that kind of thing, then you're probably going to love this episode. If you like references and you're okay with a story that maybe takes quite a bit of thinking, you're good. Honestly, you're going to love it. But honestly, for me, this episode was kind of somewhere in the middle. I didn't dislike it. I thought it was a very fitting send-off for Jodie and for Chibnall. And I liked it for what it was, you know? For what it was, a big scale, reference-filled episode with a unique plot. I thought it was interesting, to say the least. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, definitely above average, above, say, a 5. I'd maybe give it, I don't know, maybe a 7. Because while it definitely wasn't anywhere near perfect, I thought it was cool, and I liked the ideas that it tried to put about. And there are a lot of cool emotional moments, lots of good character drama, lots of good villains, interesting plot lines. Yeah, a lot of good. And really, I'd say the biggest bad was, again, just the fact that it's almost too much. But yeah, I think I've beaten that dead horse enough. It was good, but confusing. Yeah, I keep saying that. Um, yeah, my other issue is that just so many plot points, again, just were whizzed by so fast, like the good Dalek thing, where it just felt like that could have been interesting if you had expanded upon it and perhaps like tied it in better. Um, and okay, a big thing that I haven't covered yet, that I'm going to go ahead and do is companion exits. So Dan and Yaz also both have their swan songs, and like I said, there was the departure of Yaz, and it was emotional, and I feel like it was fitting. Dan, I did not cover yet though, and Dan's was actually at the beginning of the episode, when there's that, when the Cybermen initially capture the energy girl thing, and Dan pretty much gets like shot in the face by a cyber laser, somehow magically survives it, which I just find utterly strange. But that combined with the fact that he nearly gets like flung off into space, yeah, he gets like terrified because literally he's within an inch of his life. And he's like, hey, I can't really go on with this lifestyle as much as I'm gonna miss it. It's just too much for me, which I feel like is kind of fitting for his character because I feel like he never really adjusted to the TARDIS as much as everyone else, especially Yaz. Um, because she obviously had 3 whole seasons, and we see in this episode, especially with her like flying the TARDIS and stuff, she really, really does kind of come into her own, and I've come to actually quite like Yaz as a companion. Whereas in the beginning, she really had not much character, so I like how she's evolved over time. And Dan, I feel like, didn't have time to really do that, either in universe or not. So I feel like, yeah, his character really wouldn't maybe have as much of an incentive to stay till the very end. He would maybe eventually say, hey, this lifestyle isn't quite for me. I'm not as adjusted to it as they are. And Dan ultimately leaves. But as I said, he comes back at the end, which I think is a very sweet moment. So while I don't love these character exits, I feel like they are relatively fitting for the characters, and I feel like they're a nice send off. In terms of overall thoughts on the episode, barring what I've already said, I feel like all the ideas in it are good, but this felt like a very kind of Chibnall episode, which I feel like isn't a bad thing in this case because it's their swan song. He's gonna throw everything at the board, throw all the darts and everything in. And it certainly was, which, like I said, is both this episode's biggest strength and its biggest fault. But I think overall, like I said, I liked it 7 out of 10. And it makes me very excited for the upcoming specials next year. I think we've got like a year to wait, possibly even November. Probably that exactly, November 23rd, I'd guess. But yeah, I'm quite hyped for that, and honestly, I liked this episode. I genuinely think I liked it despite its faults. So yeah, this has been my review of The Power of the Doctor. I've been Tebow2. Be sure to subscribe, to follow my Instagram, Tebow2IT, to follow my Twitter, which is also Tebow2IT, to join my Discord, and in there or in the comments, leave your thoughts on the episode. I'd love to hear what you all think of it. And lastly, just have a nice day. Goodbye.